So yeah, I always love opening my eyes and having new people here. We have Shelley and Frank and Linda and Janet have all arrived. So like Elijah, you open your eyes, and there they are. Um, well, if any of you saw my email, I shared that on Tuesday morning, I woke up, I hadn't slept well, I was really upset, and I just felt like I lost my faith. And I wasn't even someone who considered myself with a particularly strong faith. But boy, just in that moment of feeling alone and confused, it's one of these, oh, I didn't really realize it was an issue until it was gone. And I won't, in a little few minutes, I'm going to tell you the story of how I got it back. But part of what I did was, and I think I shared last week, it's like, gee, we just had this insurrection and now we're talking about order, and it just didn't feel like it was connecting with me. So I called my friend and mentor, Rabbi David Jaffe, and he's like, well, what's up for you? You know, what is it what are the midot that you're experiencing? And work on yourself and then kind of teach from that place. So the two that came up were, you know, faith and authenticity. And so he gave me a really interesting, faith isn't something I write about in the book. And he gave a really interesting perspective on it and shared some materials with me. So we're going to be going through those. But I want to, because part of it's the idea that faith has to do with like trustworthiness. It's like something is there, you expect it to be there, and then it's not. So I wanted to begin just maybe, you know, what are some of the things that you have faith in, and has your sense of trustworthiness about it ever been shaken? Joanne, you're on mute.
Right. Okay. Yeah, so I think that I basically believe in the power of prayer because I feel like it has helped me. Back in 2011, I had breast cancer. A lot of people were praying for me, and I did well. And I'm now part of a group of women that says Tehillim for people who are ill. And I mean, of course, a lot of them are still ill, but some of them have had a good recovery. And there was at least one person who we really thought wasn't going to make it, who made it. And um, feel that, and I feel like God's protection. It's funny, like when I leave, if I stay for the evening service on Saturday, I feel like safe just walking home. I mean, not that it's particularly dangerous where I live, but just in general, you know, you can be very paranoid and look over your shoulder and all this. And I feel like I'm wrapped in a protected, um, I don't know, cloud or something like that. So that's kind of what it is. And I think, you know, it's hard to deal with the incorporeal God and all this, but I still feel that there's something, you know, and there's especially when we pray together and there's a connection. Okay, that's it.
Great, thank you, Joanne. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I did want to say, I asked the question in such a way, so it might be like faith in something divine or something greater. It might be in something else. So if you're sort of don't operate on that channel, don't feel like you have to kind of manufacture something or feel like, you know, because I suspect we all have faith in something or someone. Carol.
I've always had faith in that there was a basic goodness in nature and in the world and in human beings, and that there was a balance. And that has been sorely shaken. Not the nature part. I still think, you know, nature is just nature. If I get flooded, it's just nature being nature. It's not evil. But I don't have the kind of faith I had in people that I used to have. I I used to honestly believe that the arc of history bends toward justice, slowly, but toward justice. And that's been very much shaken in me lately, and as has the basic, the idea that most people have that loving kindness in them somewhere, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of it. Or I shouldn't say that, that's not true. I have seen some, but I'm also seeing quite the reverse, and very loudly.
Thank you, Carol. Yeah, Linda.
I have faith that the sun will rise and the sun will set, or however that appears. I guess that's my constant. And I'll be in trouble if things change.
Thank you, Linda. For those of us who live in the Bay Area, at one point over the summer, the smoke from the fires got so bad that it basically didn't get light, all day. And the most we got was like an orange. And, I could get an appreciation for why like people in the ancient world who didn't follow celestial objects would freak out in a solar eclipse. I mean, it is on a very visceral level, very disruptive to see like, where did the sun go? This isn't an overcast day where it's going to rain. This is just plain dark. Yeah, so thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Nancy.
I guess sometimes I have difficulty in the faith of the divine. Sometimes I feel it or get glimpses of it. Right now I'm really struggling, and I almost feel just like nothing, like I'm numb. I've talked to a lot of friends. They're angry, they're sad, they're fearful. And my faith, when I lose faith, it's usually because something negative has happened in my bubble. Well, this is the world's bubble. And right now I have lost faith that why is there so much hatred? Why is there so much divisiveness? Why can't we get along? Why can't we see the differences and accept each other? And to me, that's a big faith that I thought we were one. For me, if I think of the divine, that we're all a part of this divine, where are we? We're not together right now. And I'm very emotional about it, and I'm more fearful. And when I become fearful, where's the faith? What can I hold on to? Is that faith, if it really is a divine, where's that protection? I don't feel it right now.
When I read about people holding on to a cross or pulling out a Bible before storming the Capitol, I shake my head. It makes me wonder, what is this? And when I hear people say, knowing what the truth is, we like to say the truth will set you free. Well, there are people in the world who will not accept truth. And I can't do a darn thing about that. We used to say, if only we could educate people, they would come around to our point of view. Oh, no, doesn't happen. It could happen, but it often does not.
Yeah, I mean, Germany was the most educated country in the world. Didn't prevent the Holocaust. It's a different equation. It's a heart space thing. It's a morality. It's quite know what it all is. But yeah, it is our faith in culture and society, and when we see people behaving this way. Shelley, did you have your hand up? You're on mute still.
On my, okay, sorry. I get what she's saying, and everybody in the world right now, we're on different poles. We have people like me who give sunshine. That's my main purpose, to give love to people, to let them, even if I hit a dark moment, I always know that there's light, like you showed us when we close our eyes. I love that every time I meditate. And so I truly believe that, when we feed into that fear and that terror, we're actually also creating it. You talked about the heart space, and it's proven that if we get into our heart and we actually project, serenity, we can actually affect the world. And I do believe our words affect the world, and, because it goes out into the ether and people pick it up. And so I think the more anger there is in the world, it's harder, therefore, for people like me to keep on, pushing it in, because I'm up against a wall, because it's so thick right now. So I think if we can have even more positiveness, and learning what we're learning with you, I think has developed a great sense of, serenity and understanding, so that we can speak out more.
Yeah, thank you, Shelley. The Talmud teaches that in anger, the prophets lose their power of prophecy and the wise forget their wisdom. So what happens to the rest of us? So
Exactly.
what happens to your average person? And when these people are very, very angry, and it's challenging. Okay, well, thank you all for kind of getting us going here. So so as I said, I woke up, it was 8 or 8:30, and at 9:30 Pacific time every day, every weekday, the Institute for Jewish Spirituality has a meditation, and there's a different teacher every day. And this was a new teacher. And so she starts, and immediately she puts this image up. This is about an hour after I said I lost my faith. This is the image that appeared on the screen, which is a special rendering of, this is the Hebrew letter Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. That's the unpronounceable name of God. Sarah Waxman, she was who founded the Well in Boston. She was leading this, and she couldn't remember where she first learned of this, but it's arranged this way, so it's like a human body, where the Yud is a head, this first Hey is the shoulder and the arms, the Vav is the torso, and then we have the waist and the legs here. And so if I was saying, well, where's God? And here's God's name right there. Never before or since have I seen the Yud Hey Vav Hey in this case. So for me, I was like, okay, all right, it's in people. Maybe it's I took it as a reminder, as a form of an answer. Maybe it was coincidence. I don't know. But for me, it was a reminder that, hey, here's a community of people who are searching with us, and that the divine is in the human form. And she did a very cool meditation. If you go to their Facebook page, you can do it, where you would kind of breathe into the Yud and breathe out through the arms, and this kind of the arms of the Hey. So sometimes it just takes a little reminder of some form or another. And again, let's see what was next. So we're going to get into this faithfulness, but I'm just curious if you ever had just a reminder, maybe a friend that called you randomly, or something that happened that kind of got you a little bit out of a funk and helped you kind of reconnect with who you are, or with the world the way you wanted it to be. I see a number of people nodding. Anyone care to share, or are we all just kind of on the same page here? Yeah, Carrie.
When I get in a funk, I call my sister, who is, she has a very hard job as a lawyer and advocate for the mentally ill and homeless in Washington, D.C. And she has a lot of stress in her job, but she also has she's taking care of my 101-year-old father too. So, but she keeps this perspective, this Zen perspective, on a daily basis of what's important and what's meaningful. And she always helps me, she makes me laugh. And she may not say anything profound, but just connecting with her just brings me out of the funk. and back into the real world. And I am always grateful for that, always.
Thank you. Thank you. Your sister, Carol.
A lot of times it's nature. Seeing something really beautiful. And I remember when I was a kid and I just started driving, so I was about 18, I had a big fight with my dad, which wasn't an uncommon thing, but this was a particularly nasty one. I have no idea what over. I drove up into the hills, and it was actually in my mind to take that little old car and drive it over a cliff somewhere with me in it. And all of a sudden I came around a corner and there were these deer in the road. And it was dusk, and it was just breathtakingly beautiful. And I always say the deer saved me. It really did. Because suddenly nothing mattered but the beauty of these deer in the road looking at me looking at them. And there was this connection to nature, and I was fine.
Thank you, Carol. Well, let's look at some text. So this is some of the material that David Jaffe shared with me. And in the book of Isaiah, there's a lot of descriptions of the Jewish people. And one of them is for us having faithfulness. And then in the Talmud, this word faithfulness or emunah, it says it refers to the section of the Mishnah on seeds that deals with agriculture. And some of the commentary on this from later, hundreds of years later, says the farmer who sows seeds places his faith in the life giver of all the worlds, for he trusts that God will provide all that is needed for his crops to grow. So a very nice lead in on nature we had from Carol here, and whatever we might think about the life giver of God, it is, you plant a seed, you water it, it starts to grow. So I'm wondering, how does this speak to us in the world we're living in today? What does this bring up for you? Janos.
Since in December 22nd, I'm dealing with somebody really raised a complaint against me to my college. And I had that 3 years ago. It's very tedious, very uncomfortable process where actually when you are professional and you're working and you provide service, you are assumed guilty and you need to prove the innocent, that you don't harm people. And it's really briefly, it's not about the client, my client, but my client's son who lives in States, I'm in Canada. He raised this complaint. So it took me about 3 weeks. So now we finished with my lawyer, but very tedious job. So I lost, as you say, lost my faith. I really thinking why I'm doing this. I'm reaching out, dealing with depression, with suicide, with breaking up families, with people's pain and all of that. Now I need to defend myself that I'm not harming people. I'm actually loving people and I want to reach. So actually it was very hard on me since December 22nd. Hear about the seeds. Actually, I'm doing mindfulness meditation, a way of praying, where the whole lyrics go by that there is a sunshine and a water and a seed, and things are happening on their own. So there is a way of God making this world, and there will be enough, and the process will go the way it will go, and I trust it will go. So that would be my faith as well. But I'm struggling on that one. I'm on the receiving end.
Yeah, well, I listen with an open heart and wishing you strength and comfort as you go through that. Any other thoughts?
sometimes when I plant seeds, yes, it's a miracle, and I feel that. What about the times they don't come up? What happens then?
Yeah, I have to say, when I was reading this, I'm like, I don't feel like seeds are growing in this garden right now. You know, you're supposed to, you have an election, people go to Washington, they get sworn in, there's a process, there's a system, it just happens. Maybe you get a little drought, maybe you get a little this and that. This feels like a plague of locusts have come in and like just chowed down on the whole thing. And but sometimes you're right. Sometimes part of the picture is seeds don't grow. So I guess the question for us is, how best do we live our lives? Do we expect the seed to grow, or do we expect the seed not to grow? Frank.
Yeah, that's it's a good point. What do we notice? The rejection of an election, or do we notice the people who are working together to make lives better for everybody in all kinds of different ways? So I think the way we see the world or in our daily life, in our daily action and awareness, is important. I think Linda and I agreed yesterday to have a news fast, which really means, not turning on NPR. It's kind of, you have to kind of remind yourself, you go into the kitchen and that's where we listen to NPR. And nope, today is not the day. But seriously, are we in tune with all the amazing things that are being done on all levels by our neighbors, by ourselves? Or are we kind of aware of some of the ugly pictures and ugly images and ugly stories? So I think that also in this case, one will lead us to less trustworthiness. The other will lead us to more trustworthiness by knowing that people are doing things that are valuable and a miracle, really.
Thank you, Frank. Linda.
I like having a friend like Frank because he has the capacity to see the upside or the sunny side in most experiences, and I'm a good counterbalance for him. But what I also wanted to say is I belong to kind of an interfaith spiritual group in Virginia Beach, and one of the teachings that came to me was, maybe there's a purpose for our lives. And I really can't always hold on to that, but sometimes I can. And it helps me get through the darker times, thinking that maybe something positive will come out of this. Sounds kind of Pollyannish when I say it, though.
Well, we'll remember that thought till the end, at the very end today, after we split into groups and come back. I'm going to share a reading which speaks to that a little bit.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I have an interruption. And I think it's great that you're talking about seeds. And I know I missed all of it. But because I lived in the Central Valley for 10 years and was very well acquainted with farmers and seed planting and the whole cycle of crops, it's actually very wonderful. Much like you were saying, it's a miracle. And yes, the answer to the question, should we expect the seeds to sprout and come up, is yes and no. So the farmers very definitely think when they plant the seeds, they are going to sprout and come up. But when they don't, well, the raisin farmers, let's not go into, because they're just complainers. We're not going to talk about that. They're notorious. But the rest of the farmers, what they'll do is they'll learn from that. If the seeds don't come up, there's a reason, and then they need to learn. And did they let that field rest, like it says in Torah? Did they let that field rest long enough? Or did they plant some alfalfa there, which nourishes the soil. So a lot of times things happen, and it's constant with the growth cycle and with farmers. And so yes, it's true. We kind of expect that they will. We kind of hope they will. And if they don't, then it's back to the drawing board.
Thank you. Well, that's a good segue to, because it's, yeah, it's learning along the way. David Jaffe, he wrote, maybe someone could just read this paragraph for us.
If the farmer didn't trust at some level that the seeds would grow in the ground, he would probably not go to the effort to hoe and plow and do all the work needed to produce crops. Community building and education is very much the same. Rabbis and educators invest a tremendous amount of energy creating community based on a trust that people can connect, learn, and grow. Without this basic trust, the work of community building and education would feel too hopeless and hard since the results are not immediate.
I can't remember, is anyone here a teacher? I can't remember. Yeah, Carol. Immediate results?
No, some of the results, in fact, have come back to me very recently. And I stopped teaching in 2008. And so I recently had students come back to me, one that I had in second grade, and say what an effect I had on her life. And it's amazing. Now, I know some of my students didn't fare so well. Some of them, I'm sure, didn't turn out real well, had really hard lives. One I know had a really hard life, and she has recently come to me and told me that when she was a child, she said, I only had one safe place, and that was in your classroom, which is like, that's heartbreaking to me. But yeah, it takes, sometimes you never know. You just don't, you will never know. If you're a teacher, you will never know which kids you really, for sure, all the kids you reached and all the ones that slipped through your cracks. But I have had probably in the last year or so, about half a dozen students say things to me that really reaffirmed that I did okay.
Right. Yeah. But it sounds like you had a trust that those seeds were going to grow, like you were going to do your part, and that the investment was going to pay off, at some point.
I couldn't have done it if I didn't have that faith. If I didn't believe that what I was doing was important, and that what I was doing was positive and helpful, and that someday the seeds that I planted, maybe not certainly not in all of the kids, because you always miss some, they personality conflict or whatever. But that in some of them, those seeds would take root and beautifully grow. And you have to. And you have to also understand that you may never know. Very likely you will never know.
Yeah, I've gotten emails from people who, out of the blue, it's like, I've been on your list for 3 years. Boy, you've really helped. Never heard from them before. Like, wow, you don't know. So before we were talking about sort of that faith in just the goodness of people, or the faith in our society being really shaken, how might this passage help us address that? What might this teaching? Yeah, Joanne.
Well, this reminds me of that. It's a very famous story. I think it's Talmud, or Pirkei Avot, something like that. The Ethics of the Fathers. Like an old man was planting a tree, and someone came up to him and said, "Why are you planting a tree? You're not going to live to see it grow and become, bear fruit." And he said, "Well, trees were planted by my ancestors or forefathers, and they were here for me, so I'm doing this for the next generation." And I think, maybe that's the kind of faith you have to do. If you put in your good work, there's another quote that says you don't have to complete the work, you have to just do your best. And So I related to also to my son saying to me at some point when he was an adult or yeah, an adult, he said, "You taught me to be kind." So I think like whatever terrible parents I was, I spoiled them rotten and all this. If I taught them to be kind, that's like the best thing. And I think love is something to have faith in.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. As we were reading this and talking about it, I was thinking about the state of Georgia, and it's easy to kind of say, oh well, Stacey Abrams, and she lost, and she founded this organization, and 2 years later, the state turned blue. And you know, if you interview the head of the Democratic Party in Georgia, they've been working on registering for people for 20 years. And they said, someday we're going to change the power structure. Now, maybe you don't agree with those politics, but the lesson for us is that sort of long-term investment based upon what you think is right can, you know, one day can change things dramatically.
Well, it's that arc of history that bends very slowly.
Yeah, but it gets bent by people too. Well, the actions we take make a big difference. Carrie, I saw your hand.
You just reminded me about gardening, about planting. I've been a gardener all my life, and the house that I left a couple years ago, I had worked for 12 years on the garden, and each year it was different and bigger and better, and there were mistakes and so forth. And I'm starting all over again at this house, which was a blank slate, and I had to keep reminding myself that you just start with a little bit, and it grows. The work grows on itself, and eventually you may not have your vision, but it's a layering, it's a process. You just keep adding on, and it connects with one another, and it starts to get I can't pronounce the word, exponential, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think the same thing happens when you plant the seeds of kindness, or you plant the seeds of love, or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. In the beginning, it's just really tiny, and you just don't, you know, you're not so sure it's going to work, and then eventually, it just is all over, and it becomes really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let us get ready to break up into groups. So to do so, I want to start, and today I truly did prepare more than I could cover. So what we're going to do today is, one of the ideas that came out is maybe getting together and writing a prayer or a kavanah, an intention with a partner. So I'll break you into groups of 2 or 3. And first, as I was doing some research on anger in the Mussar Torah commentary, I came across this wonderful prayer written by Rabbi Pamela Wax. May I have someone to read this, please?
May it be your will that any anger I express be used only for constructive ends and in service to just causes. May my anger ultimately lead to greater humility, wisdom, and justice. May I be called to account for any anger that is used for destructive or self-serving ends. May any anger I feel or express be held in balance with love and compassion for all humanity and offered with purity of motive. Amen.
Thank you. I just love this. Facebook's algorithm is like not showing this to anybody on my page, but if you're on Facebook, go like this post on the American Mussar Facebook page and share it. It was really tremendous. So when you get together with your partners, I'd like you to try to write something together, like a prayer or an intention, to help process kind of what you're experiencing, what you're going through. And there's a little bit of a formula, which is like may, and then like whatever the feeling situation is. May any anger I express, be, and then the outcome used for constructive ends. So just to really help kind of process and maybe transform, nothing we're feeling is wrong, but any questions about this? Okay, let's see about the breakout rooms. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to open the breakout rooms, probably have like 6-7 minutes, something like that, and then come back and love to hear what you come up with. It doesn't need to be as beautiful or profound as that, but just some idea from your heart. So just click. Wendy and Janet, do you see your join room buttons? Okay, and there they go. Well, often what I've been doing lately is I have been turning off the screen, but I'm going to set a timer, and I'm actually going to do a bonus teaching this week. Why not? Because I had some really cool material that I haven't been able to get to. So we talked about the seeds in community. There's this idea, and this is again material that was shared with me from Rabbi David Jaffe, and he put this together inspired by the book, a section in the book, Bridging the Gap by Rabbi Avi Fertig. It has to do with a story in Numbers where Aaron and Miriam are criticizing Moses, and they say, hey, aren't we prophets too? And, part of the answer is, hey, Moses is trusted throughout the household. And what that means, this ni'iman, it means being steadfast and rooted in every moment of the day. Like it says in Isaiah 22:23, I will affix him a peg in a secure place. A peg struck in strong ground will not easily fall. So I thought about this image, and when I was talking with David on the phone, it's like, yeah, I felt like the peg that was holding my life together had kind of been really shaken. Like when the Capitol was stormed, it was like somebody took a big sledgehammer and just did a number on that peg that was holding the tent. And the whole tent just got really shaky. And so what do we, how do we deal with that? Now, there are some people who are saying that the tent peg isn't shaky. What are you talking about? Or they try to blame someone else. Oh, well, the tent peg got shaky with these peaceful protesters. They weren't peaceful. They were the violent ones. And this is the kind of stuff that we've been hearing for years now. And I think like many people, we're just kind of tired of it. Because when you go into the realm of insurrection, you've crossed out of the political realm. And you are allowed to speak without being arrested by the government, but you're not allowed to incite insurrection. You're not allowed to kind of break into a place. And so for me to see that happening without the Capitol Police responding in the way that I think they should have, with preparing in the way, my tent peg was really shaken. So let's see what else we can learn here. So trustworthy means strong ground. It's a ground that can hold a secure tent peg. And we don't, like all things Mussar, you don't want to be too solid because the ground needs to be soft enough that you can actually get the tent peg in. But you don't want it to be like super dry so that it kind of grips the peg too much and you can't move it or get it around. So the question that we can ask ourselves is, or let's go on from here. Rabbi Jaffe goes on to talk about the communities and societies are built on trust. And it's not like the big actions, like, yeah, we think that just the Electoral College should work and our government's going to function. And that's a case where, yeah, there's a breakdown in the major functions of our society. But look at this. Learning to trust one another is not from heroic actions, but from small daily transactions done repeatedly over time. And it's very clear to me that this insurrection at the Capitol and this challenging of the election, this is an outcome of small lies and small community-based within the house actions of people not willing to face reality, not willing to take responsibility for their actions, not willing to stand up when someone else is being a bigot. I read a story today about the Capitol Police that for years, Black men and women working for the Capitol Police have complained about racism, and the leadership has dismissed it. They complained about the guy with the spear, and they said, hey, he has a weapon, he shouldn't be here. And they said, oh, that's not a weapon, let it go. These small actions over and over again eroded our tent peg. These small actions destroyed the trust in our community. And what did I do? All I did was I just retweeted this tweet saying that the election was stolen. Well, guess what? If you retweeted that, you're responsible. And I'm not, and within a society, we're all responsible. So I think we need to look at what are the small actions that we can take to rebuild trust within our society. And quite frankly, part of that has to do with having accountability. So it's people who have kind of broken. I'm going to close all the rooms so people are going to start coming back in about a minute. I'll give them another 12 seconds before that. But it's like, can you rebuild trust with someone who hasn't apologized, who hasn't, if someone hasn't been punished for their wrongdoing? In my mind, no. Part of rebuilding faith in the institutions is showing them acting the way they should be acting. Let's see, is there any other nuggets I want to grab for this? I don't think so. I think we are going to wait for everybody else to come back. There's one other thing from the Talmud. It says at the end of someone's life, when they're brought to account, one of the things it says is, were you trustworthy in your business dealings? I had a friend who ended up getting bullied by her boss at work. And before that happened, she saw him being unethical with vendors. And she kind of said, I should have known better because this was an unethical person. And yeah, stiffing the vendor should have been an indication that that this was a unethical person and not someone who I should have dealt with. So we are about 2 seconds away from everyone else for joining. Da-dun-da-da. Welcome back, everyone. And today I didn't go on a break. I had so much extra material that I did a bonus teaching, which I'll send you the link so you can see that. So how did that go? Would anyone like to kind of share their kavanah or their prayer that they came up with? Who would like to go first?
Hi, I'm going to let Janet actually give you the exact prayer or intention, but it was really interesting because we had the same feeling that we were dealing with. Okay, Janet, go.
Well, okay. May we channel our grief. In fact, but we were feeling grief rather than anger right now.
Okay.
May we channel, and this is still not completely edited, so may we channel our grief to promote understanding, empathy, and compassion for ourselves, and for others who are suffering.
Mm. Good.
Let us clear the way for others to move beyond for ourselves and others to move beyond their grief and paralysis. Now, this is rough. This is not completely edited. So,
And together, let us say,
amen.
Amen.
Amen. Carol had a really good one. Where are you, Carol?
Well, we did it.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I agree.
May we find equanimity and focus to survive this pandemic so that we can work to build a better world. Amen.
And together,
Amen.
let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Would anyone else care to share?
On my Buddhist prayer that I've had up on my board, on my chart.
Was this one you wrote today?
Huh?
Was this one you wrote today?
No.
Okay, let's see if anyone wrote something today first
Okay.
before we get into that.
Okay. I didn't write this.
Okay.
Mm.
Any other thoughts? How was the process of kind of working on this?
Very rushed.
Yeah, wasn't enough time. It was just enough time.
Mm. Yes. Frank and Linda, how did it go in your group?
Carol, right? I want you to say ours again because
one of the things that I thought just now is that, you know, in terms of prayer, I felt that we were fluid, meaning that it was we had the capacity to put something together, you know, and we weren't meant to do a polished piece, but the idea of thought, and I said, yeah, this is possible.
It's good.
I felt that we did some dovetailing in our ideas. They kind of, one person built on what the other one was saying.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. Yeah, this is a technique that all of us can kind of do on our own to write a personal prayer or kavanah. You know, may X be Y. You know, it's a very simple formula that we can all do. Wendy.
That's exactly what the farmer says. Put the seeds out and say, this is possible. Good job. That was wonderful. I love that.
May my seed grow into a plant.
Is anybody noticing the icon or the picture on Shelley's screen that the light and darkness comes and goes? That seems very metaphorical.
No, but I like the image.
Shelley, you're on mute, so we couldn't hear you.
I was going to say, it always happens on my screen whenever I'm doing meditations. And sometimes when we'll be talking, I'll snap a shot to see what is occurring. And it's been interesting sometimes. So I always say thank you to the divine for speaking in any way that it can through me.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm going to share with you, and this coming back to the question that came up earlier. This was, again, a teaching from IJS, and this was taught by Cantor Heather Batchelor last week. And so may we have someone to read this, please. Nobody? Everybody shy today?
Everyone's shy.
I will if you want, but I already read.
Okay, well, I'll read this one. So this was from Shem Shmuel Lech Lecha. It must be said regarding the 6 days of creation and Shabbat, by means of all the bother and confusion of the 6 days of creation, whether physical or spiritual, the klippah is ruptured, but not yet completely removed away until Shabbat, when the soul rises and the debris is pushed away. So the klippah, that's like, it's like a husk or something, you know, it's like your corn husk. So basically, when you're creating the universe, there's a lot of like sawdust and schmutz that's just kind of around. That's part of the process of creation. And it's not until Shabbat that it's all cleaned up. You know, like by analogy, they found out that when we sleep, like the brain like fills up with fluid. And it kind of rises, the fluid comes and goes. It's like it rinses out all the schmutz from the brain, all the metabolites. And that's why no amount of coffee can help if you're sleep deprived, because the schmutz is still in there. Okay, so the Shabbat cleans out the schmutz from creation. This makes sense since every place that Shabbat is written in the Torah is preceded by the 6 days of creation. Since it is impossible to imagine Shabbat without the 6 days of creation before it, just like it is impossible to imagine sifting before grinding or winnowing before, you know, whatever it said.
Sewing, I mean,
before sewing, yes. Okay, so what is this teaching saying, and how does this speak to you? What do you think of when you think of Shabbat? What role does Shabbat play?
Well, it's like an island of peace and quiet.
Yeah, rest and renewal.
It's an island of peace, of quiet and rest and renewal. But the Torah never talks about Shabbat by itself, does it? Why is that? What is the message here?
Well, I'm going to say you can't have one without the other. It's a balance. You know, I may not be Jewish, but for me, I love the very first book of the Bible. And I love the words. And I actually, when I read them, I will speak them out because, the first, God created, said, let there be light. And so I always say, let there be light. And I always say, ask and you shall receive. And so I'm constantly asking the universe and using my power of the ability to speak. And like I said, to be positive. So that's what I get from this.
Great, thank you.
The second part refers to something that to me sounds like order. There had to be the order of creation and then Shabbat, just as you have to grind it before sifting. There's an order to things.
Another way of seeing it is it's kind of a circle. So just like here, it says that you need the weekdays for the Sabbath, but at the end of Sabbath with Havdalah, you say that may the spirit of Sabbath infuse our week. So it's a circular thing. So one informs the other. Just like our work requires a rest, the lesson from the rest can help us during the week.
Thank you, Frank. I love that.
And without the work, there would be no need for rest.
When I think of celebration, being a dancer, an Israeli folk dancer, and celebrate, and what we're celebrating is all the divine has for us and has brought for us, and it's creation. And if it's not creation, then Shabbat, then what are we celebrating?
So thank you all for these comments. So how can we tie this directly to today? I will share my thoughts with you since we're almost out of time. And again, this was from Cantor Heather Batchelor, who shared this idea, and I'll put my own flavor on it. But my like dream is for like a just and caring society. And we live in a society where there's a lot of injustice, and there's a lot of systematic injustice and systematic white supremacy, and we can name it all, right? In terms of money and class, and there's all kinds of things. The anti-Semitism that some of us have suffered, et cetera. But it's not like we can just wave a magic wand and get to there. Some of these immoral institutions need to be broken. Habits need to be broken and changed. And there's a lot of schmutz that's created. You can't get to that Shabbat, we can't get to peace without there being some debris along the way. And so maybe may the events of this week and the events of this time be the schmutz on the road to a more peaceful and just world and society.
Very good. Amen.
So on that note, let us close our eyes and taking a deep breath through the nose. Say a deep thanks for the opportunity to spend this time together, to open our hearts, and to ask for what we need. And may our faith be strengthened that someone will be there to do the best they can to provide it.
Amen.
And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, I'm not sure what our topic is going to be next week, but I hope you enjoyed today. I felt very energized